lot of big words, especially during like the must have a second cup of coffee hour of the day. And we're going to get to the bottom of some of those definitions here, but I promise I won't make it quite as nerdy as it might seem like it might be. So as we mentioned, first of all, I'm always really moved by Susie's story because, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about food and food systems and the role that they play in our communities, the role that they play in health, and also the role they play on our planet. And so today we are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about regenerative food systems. Now, that's a big word. I'm going to unpack it for you in a little bit. But we're going to talk about how food systems really do have that power to touch very different seeming parts of our lives. They're really all connected right there in the middle where food brings us together. So my name is Joni, and just a little bit about all the things that I do. I do own a food brand because I'm a big believer that, we can focus all day on problems, but we have to build solutions. And even if you're building the parachute on the way down, that's the first step, is just going, okay, I see a problem, here's a solution, and I think this can make a difference. So let's talk about food. So I actually snuck off at lunch by myself thinking, okay, I'm going to review my notes. I'm going to think about what I'm going to say up here on stage. I'm a little nervous. And I'm going to go somewhere quiet. Well, what do you know? I go to this cute little Basque restaurant, and I sit down by myself, and within 5 minutes, a whole bunch of people joined me, total strangers, which was great. And they were like, you shouldn't be working during lunch. It takes away from the experience of eating. And I'm like, that's really ironic you'd say that, because I'm sitting here reading a paragraph that says just that. And as it turns out, we ended up having the most amazing lunchtime conversation. 2 people from Florida, 1 person from California, another person from Boise. 2 of them were RNs, which is near and dear to my heart because I'm an RN too. And by the end of lunch, I actually had gotten connected with Bill's boss, who owns a food company in Florida, who's interested in Snacktivist, got recipes for the Cuban authentic paella recipe from the mother, and exchanged numbers with the nurse, so that way I can get her connected with my other nursing friends in Boise, because she was super cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing example of how food brings humans together. And food is like a sacred thing. And I want us just to think for a moment about what are our feelings about food? I think a lot of Americans feel very disconnected from food. And then you say food systems, and they're like, what are you talking about? Food systems? That just seems like a computer program. But it's not. So I want us just to think about, how many of us ate today? Raise your hand if you ate. Okay, how many of us are going to eat later? How many are we eating tomorrow? Exactly. So food is one of the activities that humans do almost every day. And in fact, it's so important to being human and being a healthy organism that if you don't eat, we call it fasting. We have a special word for not eating, which is kind of an interesting concept when you think about it. But in America, we have a lot of really charged feelings and beliefs around food. I mean, if you've ever Googled, diet that's good for me or weight loss, I'm sure you walked away confused and disenfranchised and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start here. And, part of the problem is that in our modern industrial food system, we really put food in a binary box. It's either good or it's bad. Well, food's an inanimate object. It really can't be good or bad. It doesn't work that way. And we have really taken foods to the point where they're so far removed from what nature intended them to be that we have a whole category of foods that are really considered not foods. They're so processed that even mice won't eat them. Now think about that. That's an interesting thing. So I want us to, kind of get reacquainted with what our feelings are about food. And think about the fact, too, that food is, right now, the leading cause of death in the United States and now globally, diet-related disease. So what we eat every day does matter. And it's not a matter of finding, what's good, what's evil, finding the right diet where there's, a complex set of rules and rituals. We need to reconnect with food and where food comes from and all the people whose hands touch food as it comes through the food system. We need to think about the soil that food was grown in. So we're going to go to the base of the system, which I do say farm here because I think most people in Boise, when you ask, oh, where's your food come from? You guys say a farm. You go to another zip code, they might go McDonald's or like the grocery store, because I think in Boise we have more of an intact like farm to fork community. But really I want to kind of beg you guys to think for a second really of where food comes from. Has it ever dawned on you that plants are actually farmers too? Plants actually farm the soil, and that's where they pull all the nutrition out of the ground, and they create soil, and they create all the things that we eat. And even if you eat nothing but meat, well, guess what? That animal ate plants. And plants are an amazing, magical, really change maker on our planet because they pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and they bring it down here to the lithosphere, another nerdy word, where we live, which is a tiny little thin crust that surrounds the earth, and it's what makes life as we know it possible. So let's think about soil for a second. I don't think a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about soil. Soil science is probably one of the nerdiest sciences out there. And but when you think about it, I think my whole life, and I grew up farming, I was one of those kids that had a job picking berries for money. And probably at age 8, my aunt and uncle had a large farm. All of our neighbors had farms. We had a farm, but we didn't get paid for the work we did there. So that was a little different. So my sisters and I always bailed and went to someone else's farm where we'd actually get paid. And so, because I was like, oh, if we get out of here, we won't have to, do whatever we need to do. And we'll actually get some cash for candy later, which, obviously when you're a little kid, that's your motivator. So it's, I kind of grew up always having this connection to where food came from, but I never really thought about the fact that there's dirt and there's soil. And what is the magical process that transforms mineral dirt into soil, which grows everything we know in the biological world? Now, soil is a magical thing. It consists of a complex environment that's collaborative, it's symbiotic, and it's literally billions of little microorganisms that you can't see, which is one of the reasons we don't think a lot about soil. Most of it is invisible. You can see it under a microscope, you can see earthworms, but all the other little critters you can't really see. And just for a moment, I want for you guys to think about the fact that there are more microorganisms in a tablespoon of soil than all the people on the planet ever. Ever. Not just right now, alive today, ever. And that is what drives all biological systems as we know it today. That is the buffer system that keeps the planet healthy and helps keep climate intact. It helps create water cycles that make sure that we're getting water when we need it and we're not having droughts and we're not having excessive flooding. Soil is the driver that drives so many of these natural systems. Soil is the driver that makes food truly healthy. When you think about where nutrition comes from in your food, we're like, oh yeah, broccoli, it's healthy. But where did that broccoli come from? Was it grown in healthy soil? How is that broccoli plant mining the minerals out of the dirt to get them onto your plate so that you know you're getting the nutrition that you need in your broccoli? That's all driven by this complex and amazing part of the soil system called the rhizosphere. One of the things I want you to think about today is that we are marching towards a pretty significant disbalance on our planet, where this dirt and soil balance is very, very disrupted. And when I look at the earth and I look at the soil and I look at all this complex microbial world that exists, it's really a microbiome. And it's a lot like our microbiome in our stomachs. Everybody has a microbiome. It's almost like its own entity. It's responsible for helping your digestion. It's actually responsible for 40% of all chemical metabolites that go through your body every day, that circulate through your body. They're all produced by the microbiome. It's the same thing in our soil. And there are so many similarities between our bodies and the bodies of the planet that actually keep that balance. So it's no wonder that today we have health system issues, healthcare access, diet-related disease. It's a $1 trillion industry. And after being in the healthcare system for many years, I was an RN for over a decade, mostly in ICU, cardiovascular care, emergency, and diabetic education. And I can tell you, our healthcare system is headed towards collapse. There's no way we can accommodate the burden of illness that is coming at us from diet-related disease. I look out at the world and I see climate-related things happening, and I look at desertification, and I'm like, oh no, another big catastrophe, just like healthcare. And sometimes I want to curl up in a ball and cry, and I'm like, what are we going to do about this? I have 3 kids that are growing up in this world, and we've got, all these huge problems. What is the solution? And I truly believe that food is where all of these systems come together, and it's a place that we can all connect to, we can all be active with, because we all eat every day.